old days, in the city of Addis Ababa, there was a young man by the name of Ahra. He had come as a boy from the country of Garaj, and in the city he became the servant of a rich merchant, Captain Hassai.
Captain Hassai was so rich that he owned everything money could buy. He was often bored because he had tried everything he could think of, and there was nothing new for him to do. One winter night, when the cold was blowing across the plateau, and Captain was feeling particularly bored, he called to his servant Ahra to bring wood for the fire. When Ahra finished, Captain began to talk.
How much cold can a man stand? I wonder if it would be possible for a man to stand through an entire night on the highest peak, Mountain Toto, without blankets or clothing, and still not die.
I don't know, but it seems like it would be a foolish thing.
Perhaps there's nothing to gain by it. It would be a foolish thing to spend a night in that way. But if he was trying to win an important bet by standing on that mountaintop,
I'm sure that a courageous man could stand without clothes on Mount Intito for the entire night and not die of it. But for me, I have nothing to bet, so it's no concern to me.
well, I'll tell you what. Since you're so sure it can be done, I'll make a bet with you anyway. If you can stand among the rocks of Mountain Toto for an entire night without food, water, or clothing, or blankets or fire, and not die of it, then I'll give you 10 acres of good farmland for you to own, with a house and cattle. Ahra could hardly believe what he had heard.
Do you really mean it?
I'm a man of my word.
Then tomorrow night I will do it, and afterwards, for all the years to come, I will be able to till my own soil.
Ahra left Captain and walked outside the house. Soon the excitement at the idea of having his own farm gave way to great fear. He knew that the wind swept bitterly across the peak and that the threat of death was very real. In the morning, Ahra went to see a wise old man of his own tribe and told him of the bet he had made. The old man listened quietly and thoughtfully. He looked at Ahra and said,
I will help you. Across the valley from Mountain Toto is a high rock that can be seen in the daytime. Tomorrow night, as the sun goes down, I shall build the fire so that it can be seen from where you will stand on the peak. All night long you must watch the light of my fire. Do not close your eyes or let sleep overcome you. As you watch my fire, think of its warmth and think of me, your friend, sitting there tending it for you. If you do this, you will survive no matter how bitter the night wind is.
Ahra thanked the old man with all his heart and went back to Hapton's house with a feeling of peace. He told Hapton that he was ready, and in the late afternoon Hapton sent him, under the watchful eyes of other servants, to the top of Mountain Toto. There, as night fell, Ahra removed his clothes and stood in the damp cold that swept across the plateau with the setting sun. Across the valley, several miles away, Ahra saw the light of his friend's fire, shining like a star in the darkness.
The wind turned colder, and it seemed to pass through his flesh and chill the marrow in his bones. The rock on which he stood on full of ice. Each hour the cold numbed him more until he thought he would never be warm again. But he kept his eyes upon the twinkling light across the valley. He remembered that his old friend sat there tending the fire for him. Sometimes wisps of fog blotted out the light, and then he anxiously strained to see until the fog passed. He sneezed and coughed and shivered and began to feel desperately ill. Yet all through the night he stood there, and only when the dawn came did he put on his clothes and go down the mountain in company of other servants.
Hapton was very surprised to see Ahra, whom he was certain would die out in the bitter cold of the mountain top. He questioned the servants thoroughly. Did it stay all night without food or drink? Did it remain without blankets or clothing? The servants answered truthfully that he had done all of those things. Well, you're a strong fellow. How did you manage to do it?
I simply watched the light of the fire from a distant hill.
What? You watched a fire? Then you lose the bet. You are still my servant, and I will give you no land.
But this fire was far away and this fire was not close enough to warm me. It was far across the valley.
I won't give you the land. You didn't fulfill the conditions of the bet. That was only the fire that saved you.
Ahra felt such despair that he wept. All that he did was for nothing. He went to his old friend and told him what happened.
Take the matter to a judge.
Ahra went to a judge and complained, and the judge sent for Hapton and the servants who had accompanied Ahra up the mountain. When Hapton told his story and the servants reported that Ahra had watched a distant fire from across the valley, the judge told Ahra that he had lost, for Hapton's condition was that he must be without fire.
Once more, Ahra went to his friend with the sad news that he was doomed to the life of a lowly servant, as though he had not gone through the terrible ordeal on the mountaintop.
Don't give up hope. More wisdom grows in wild in the hills than in any city judge. I'll find another way to help you.
He got up from where he sat and went to find a man named Hailu, in whose house he had been a servant when he was young. He explained to the good man about the bet between Hafton and Ahra and asked if something could be done.
Don't worry about it. I will take care of it for you.
Several days later, Hailu sent invitations to many wealthy people in the city to come to a feast at his house. Hafton was among them, and so was the judge who had rules against Ahra.
When the day of the feast arrived, the guests came riding upon mules and fine trappings, their servants strung out behind them on foot. Hafton came with 20 servants, one of whom held a silk umbrella over his head to shade him from the sun, and 4 strummers who played to signify the great Hafton had arrived.
The guests sat on soft rugs laid out for them and talked with each other. From the kitchen came odors of wonderful things to eat: roast goat, corn, yams, and pancakes called injera, and many tantalizing sauces. The smell of food made the guests even hungrier.
Time passed. The food should have been served, but it remained in the kitchen. The guests began to fidget in their seats, looking uncomfortably at each other. The evening came, and still no food had been served. It was curious, everyone thought, that the Honorable Hailu would be so disrespectful towards his guests. Delicious smells continued to come from the kitchen.
At last, with great agitation, Hafton called out,
Hailu! Why do you do this to us? Why do you invite us to a feast that serve us nothing?
Why? Can't you smell the food?
Indeed, we can smell it, but smelling is not eating. There's no nourishment in it. Hailu's face became serious.
And is there warmth in a fire so distant that it can hardly be seen? If Ara was warmed by the fire he watched while standing on Mountain Toto, then you have been fed by the smells coming from my kitchen.
Hailu explained the entire story to the startled guests. He glanced often at Hafton and the judge while he spoke. The guests shook their heads in disapproval as they heard how Ahra had been denied his land, first by Hafton, then by the judge.
The judge now saw his mistake, and Hafton was shamed. He thanked Hailu for his advice and announced that Ahra was then and there the owner of the